What happens when a cheerful morning segment suddenly turns into one of the most uneasy moments ever seen on live TV? When a music legend finds herself hit with questions she never approved or expected. And when a host refuses to change direction even after every possible sign to stop. This is the story of how Gwen Stefani ended up walking off the Today's Show set. And believe me, you'll want to hear exactly how this situation spiraled. Because what began as a friendly album promotion turned into something nobody predicted. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment telling me whether you think the host went too far, because once you hear the full situation, you'll probably have strong thoughts of your own. The studio lights were bright like always, and the usual morning energy filled the air. When Stefani sat across from the host, Sarah Mitchell, with the smooth and calm confidence of someone who had done interview after interview for years. Everything had started normally. Sarah asked about Gwen's new album, her creative process, and what fans could expect from the upcoming tour. Gwen chatted happily, smiling, describing late-night studio sessions and the producers who helped shape the sound she was excited to share. But then Sarah shifted slightly in her chair, and something in the room seemed to shift with her. It was subtle, but you could feel a change. She leaned forward, her expression sharpening, becoming more serious and pointed. What she said next would trigger a chain of events that nobody in that room was ready for. "So Gwen, I want to bring up something that's been going around online lately," Sarah started, her tone suddenly more investigative than friendly. "There've been some pretty direct comments from your old bandmates about creative control and who truly led no doubt back in those big years. Some people say you've been adjusting the history a little in recent interviews. What do you think about that?" Gwen's smile faded for a moment. Her publicist off camera stiffened right away. This topic was not approved. The pre-show agreement had been specific. This interview was supposed to focus on the new album, the tour, maybe a few fun personal questions about her family. Old band drama was absolutely off limits. "Well, Sarah," Gwen answered, her voice still steady but with a clear edge, "I think anyone who lived through those years knows what the dynamic was. I've always been thankful for my time with the band and everything we did. We were young, we were learning, and we made something meaningful. I don't think anything needs rewriting." Sarah nodded, but instead of easing off, she pressed deeper. "That's interesting," she continued, "because Tony said in a recent podcast that certain songwriting credits and decision-making processes weren't exactly the way they've been described. He said there were songs where your contribution was more about performing than creating. And he's not the only one speaking up. Do you think maybe people misunderstood your role? Or do you think your memory of those years is just different from theirs?" The smile was gone completely now. Gwen's jaw tightened as she drew a slow breath, clearly trying to stay composed even though she'd been caught off guard by how aggressive the questions had become. "I think," Gwen said carefully, "that everyone can have their own memories and opinions. But I was involved in every song, every choice, every late night and long day. I put my heart into the band's music. Anyone questioning that wasn't in the room with us. And honestly, this isn't really the moment to rehash decades-old band dynamics. I'm here to talk about new music that I'm proud of." It was a clear boundary, a polite but direct signal to move on. Any experienced interviewer would have recognized it and changed the topic. But Sarah didn't move on. Instead, she dug even deeper. "Right, but a lot of viewers want to understand this because it connects to something bigger," Sarah insisted. "It's about honesty. It's about giving proper credit. And when several people from your past are saying similar things, people start to wonder. So, I guess what I'm really asking is, do you think you've been completely truthful about your contributions? Or is there maybe some ego involved in how you remember the past?" The word ego hit the air like a spark. Gwen's publicist actually stood up and motioned urgently to the producers to stop this. But since they were live, nobody could cut things easily. Sarah held the microphone, and everything kept rolling. Gwen's reply was still controlled, but the tension was impossible to miss. "Sarah, I've always been honest about my career," she said. "I've talked about teamwork, about growth, about mistakes. But what you're doing now feels less like real journalism and more like trying to stir up conflict that doesn't exist. I came here in good faith to discuss my new work, and you're surprising me with topics from people who gave interviews I haven't even heard. I'm just asking what the audience wants to know, Sarah said, sounding defensive. This is live TV. These are real conversations, and part of being a public figure is being willing to address things that are uncomfortable. There's a difference between uncomfortable and disrespectful, Gwen replied sharply. There's a difference between tough questions and an ambush. You didn't tell us any of this beforehand. Your producers told my team this segment was about the album. If you wanted to do some kind of trap interview, you should have said so. The tension grew thicker. Crew members looked at each other, unsure whether to stop the segment or let it keep going. Sarah, determined or stubborn depending on how you see it, kept pushing. I don't think this is a trap, Sarah argued. These are public statements your former collaborators have made. Viewers deserve to hear your side. Isn't that reasonable? Gwen adjusted her microphone like she might take it off completely. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but more intense. What's reasonable is honoring what was agreed on. What's reasonable is treating guests with respect. What's reasonable is knowing that just because something's public doesn't mean it should be weaponized in an interview that was supposed to celebrate my new album. You're using people I care about to attack me on national TV. Sarah's expression hardened. I'm not trying to attack anyone. I want an honest discussion. Then have one, Gwen replied. Don't pretend an ambush is honesty. You booked me under false expectations. You sat me here and decided to chase a viral moment instead. That's not journalism. Sarah tried a different tactic, speaking in a voice that sounded like fake concern. I think you're being a bit defensive, she said. And maybe that's because there's some truth in what's being said. If there wasn't, wouldn't it be easy to just answer and move on? The word defensive was another spark. Oh, so now I'm emotional? Gwen asked, her voice sharp and icy. Is that what we're doing? A woman stands up for herself and suddenly she's emotional. I'm not being emotional, Sarah. I'm being clear. She leaned in slightly. Clear that you misrepresented this interview. Clear that you're focused on drama, not conversation. Clear that you're not listening or you're hunting for sound bites that make me look bad. That's not true, Sarah insisted, though her eyes darted to her notes as if searching for her next attack. So when you went solo, Sarah continued, a lot of people felt you left the band in a hurtful way. Do you think you could have handled it better? Do you regret how it all happened? Gwen let out a short, shocked laugh. Are you serious? You're asking if I regret having a solo career? If I regret following my own creative vision? I'm asking if you regret the way you did it, Sarah said. People who worked with you say they felt pushed aside. Doesn't that mean you should examine that pattern? This time, Gwen was almost speechless. She stared at Sarah like she was trying to understand if this conversation was real. You don't know me, Gwen finally said, her voice dangerously calm. You don't know my relationships or private conversations. You're acting like you can judge my character based on edited podcast clips and gossip. I'm going off what people who know you have said publicly, Sarah replied. And when multiple people say similar things, it matters. I'm not dismissing anyone, Gwen said. But I won't defend myself against vague claims and third-hand interpretations. You want to talk about patterns? Let's talk about how women in this business are constantly doubted, how we're questioned in ways male artists never are. How interviews like this one turn into interrogations instead of celebrations of work. Sarah frowned. Now you're making it about gender when it's about accountability. It's about both, Gwen shot back. If you don't see that, you're either unaware or ignoring it. I'd ask anyone these questions, Sarah insisted, but her voice had lost confidence. According to you, Gwen said. According to producers trying to boost ratings. I've done interviews for 30 years. I know the difference between tough and hostile. This is hostile. People behind the cameras exchanged awkward looks. The control room was buzzing with panic. Producers whispered urgently to each other. I don't think you're being fair to me, Sarah said, sounding both upset and defensive. "I'm doing my job. If you're not ready to deal with tough questions, maybe you're not ready to do interviews." That was it. Something in Gwen's expression changed completely. "You're questioning whether I'm ready to do interviews?" she said, incredulous. "I've done this for decades. I've handled hard questions with grace every time. But this isn't journalism. This is entertainment at someone else's expense, and I won't be part of it anymore." "So you're shutting down instead of talking?" Sarah replied desperately. "I'm not shutting down," Gwen said in a level, almost calm voice. "I'm setting a boundary. I don't have to sit here and be disrespected." Real conversations need respect. They need honesty. They need listening. None of that is happening here. "Gwen, if you pause and think," Sarah said, "you'll see I'm coming from a place of wanting clarity. These are chances to set the record straight. Don't you want that?" Gwen stood up. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her microphone carefully and set it on her chair. Then she looked at Sarah with complete certainty. "What I want," she said, her voice clear across the silent studio, "is basic human respect. And since that's too much to expect here, I'm done." Sarah's face twisted through shock, panic, and anger. "Gwen, we live. You can't just walk off. We still have 4 minutes." "Watch me," Gwen said calmly. "You can fill the time however you like." "Maybe explain why ambushing guests is okay now." "This is unprofessional," Sarah snapped. "You agreed to be here. You're leaving just because you didn't like the questions." Gwen turned back, her expression icy and steady. "You want to talk about unprofessional, lying about interview topics, luring a guest under false terms, using personal relationships as weapons for ratings. That's unprofessional." "Sarah, don't try to lecture me when you broke the agreement first." "We didn't lie," Sarah protested weakly. "These topics are fair for a celebrity." "No," Gwen said, stepping closer. "Being a celebrity doesn't mean I owe you every answer you want. It doesn't mean you can treat me like I exist for your show's drama. You confuse access with entitlement." The room was silent, every crew member frozen. "Gwen, please," Sarah begged suddenly. "Let's reset. We'll start over. We can talk about the album." "That's generous," Gwen replied with unmistakable sarcasm. "But I'm not interested in pretending this didn't happen. I'm interested in leaving." "So you're going to trash this show?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. "I'm going to tell the truth," Gwen said plainly. "If the truth makes the show look bad, maybe that's because of how the show chose to act." "Fine," Sarah yelled. "Go, run away from tough questions. Show everyone you can't handle pressure." Gwen smiled a calm, cold smile. "And there it is. The real you, not the helpful journalist. The person who lashes out when things don't go your way." "Get out," Sarah shouted. "See if anyone cares. See if this doesn't follow you forever. You're showing everyone you're entitled and difficult." Gwen didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her calmness said everything. She turned and walked toward the edge of the set, her posture firm and steady. "We're going to commercial," someone yelled. But before the screen cut away, Gwen paused and looked directly into the camera. "To everyone watching," she said, "you deserve better than this kind of television. You deserve interviews that are thoughtful and respectful. You deserve hosts who treat people like human beings. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. I hope you remember that." Then she walked off. Sarah stood alone as the feed finally cut. Behind the scenes, chaos exploded. Phones were ringing non-stop. Social media erupted with clips, comments, and debates. Some defended Gwen, some criticized the show. Executives held emergency calls. Producers panicked. And somewhere on her way out, Gwen probably felt a mix of anger, relief, and the satisfaction of finally pushing back. The remaining minutes of the segment were filled with awkward commercials and a vague statement about technical issues. But everyone knew the truth. There were no technical problems. There was a breakdown of trust. And that's how Gwen Stefani walked off the Today's Show, and not with drama, but with dignity, clarity, and the decision to stand up for herself. Whether you think she made the right choice or should have stayed, one thing is certain: nobody who saw it will forget it anytime soon. So what do you think? Was Gwen right to walk out? Or should she have handled it another way? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe, because moments like this don't happen every day, and you don't want to miss what comes next.